Hello there, this is Alexander Hall for Viva Voce Week 4. Now, I'm going to be going over all the questions that we need to go over in this Viva. So, first of all, I'm going to do my first one. Question 1. What have I done this week in my project sessions? So, we've spent most of our project sessions just recapping on scenes that we need to go over just to make sure that we're clear and that we're polishing everything clearly off so everything's perfect enough for it, perfect enough before next week. So we're making sure that those scenes are recapped, that everyone knows, everyone's familiar with the blockings, everyone's familiar with everything that needs to be done. We've also been adding in new scenes that have not been in the script, so we added in a new scene, which at first was going to be one where it was all going to be improvised, but then it didn't work as well. So we've now scripted the added in scene, so that's clear out. And also we've had a few new scenes that we haven't done before, which we've blocked as well. So we're looking over those, making sure that those are clear and clean, and and we were given one of the new scenes that we got. So firstly, it was improvised, and now we're scripting it, which we were given today. So that's clear out. Another thing that we've done in our project sessions as well, separately from Gary's sessions, when we were working with Joe on Monday mornings, Gary asked Joe to go over some voice projection techniques. So we looked at how we could sing with enough projection, so looking at some of the songs that you could easily do without relying on how much you need to push through the diaphragm and really hit a high note. It's all just about just speaking and just going like that. Do you know it's just like that? So a bit like that. Working on those techniques and also trying to use them with our acting as well. So blending them all in together so that we've got one of our own. And what research have I undertaken as well this week? I watched this film called Irreversible, which is a French film which was made back in 2003. And it's based on this couple, and it takes you like back down. So it's all reversed. So as you can say, it's irreversible. It's about these two couples. One's named Marcus, and the girl's name's Alex. And what happens is they go through this experience where, at first, it starts with like an elderly man talking with a man while he's in his bed, naked. I don't want to go in that, but then he goes on saying, "I raped my daughter," and so it then moves on, and then you go reverse back where Marcus is trying to search for this woman, and trying to search for this club where Alex could be placed. And so he gets really desperate, and it all goes like really violently. And after that, they just start rushing. He gets really agitated, and it all goes downhill. And then we go like back. It's all reversed back, so it's like a backwards in time film. And so we look at the coverage of Alex, who was the female who got raped by a stranger down in the subway of Paris, and she got really badly raped and also got attacked as well by him, which then ended up with her looking like she's all fully, the blood was all over her face and everything, and so from that point you could see from the backwards point where Marcus wanted to get revenge on the person who had attacked her. And then you go back, and then we went backwards to the party that they were at before Alex had left and then got attacked. And yeah, Marcus was all drunk. He was acting really crazy around Alex, and Alex said, "I just want to go home. I don't want to stand any of this. If you're going to behave like this, I'm sorry. I don't want to be here." And yeah, and then it goes back to back into when they're moving off straight to the party, and throughout Marcus is speaking with Alex's ex boyfriend, who's joining them at the party, and they have like a good conversation together about how they're getting on. And yeah, I think from that they already had the news, which I'll go on to later, and then it goes straight into where it all started, where Marcus and Alex were both together in their beds having a bit of fun, and they got a call from their friend who was joining them from Alex's ex-boyfriend, and saying, my car's dead. I'm going to have to take the subway, so let's do that." And so what happened from that, pretty much Marcus said, "I'm going to go and get some alcohol for tonight." And then Alex goes off straight into the toilet to check, and then finds out that she's pregnant, which then leads on right the day before any of this happened, where she was just lying in the park reading a book with children lying around, and yeah, it finishes there. So it's quite a creepy reversed back in time. You think that it's all a happy ending, but actually it isn't. It's all reversed back in time, where you can't reverse time. And it is one real quite a creepy film. But it's pretty much it's sticking to rape, but it's also talking about how your life can be great at one point, and then all of a sudden it can end off in absolute tatters from that one particular event that happens. And sometimes, and it also shows just how easily time can just ruin the lives of many, just through rape, when someone's really happy. And I think this is also links well with what happened with Lola, when Jake had raped Lola. How she was all quite happy, she was all quite open up, and she was all full of goodness, and then all of a sudden got really badly drunk, couldn't control herself, and then in the end Jake took advantage of her and used her pretty much. So yeah, it's a good example of how you start fine, everything looks absolutely all hunky-dory, and then all of a sudden it all turns to absolute, I'm not going to say the word, but anyway, it just turns into an absolute tragedy, if I can say it any more appropriately. But yeah, that's pretty much the film's plot, in my best descriptive way. I also looked at Mob Mentality, which talks about the use of how when a gang come together, when you've got a big group coming together, that everyone just stays on one person's side, then having to think themselves, that people don't think, they don't have that self-understanding of what they shouldn't do. When they're with people, they have a different self-esteem, things change completely, and it all just doesn't work out. And it also goes down with like peer pressure, also goes down to authority, tribalism, all that, and how all these link to make a mob, and how one group can just completely take control, and everything and then everyone's on one side instead of thinking about themselves, and that's how these things happen. Yeah, and also another thing that I researched was Darren Brown, who was the guy who made the TV show The Experiment, where I watched that episode, which involved like a mob together who had bullying a bullying an individual who was seen as quite a ladies' man, and wasn't the most greatest example of someone who's a good example, and people just thought, why not hurt him, why not be nasty to him, and just start doing pranks on him by getting him arrested, then getting him kidnapped by thugs, and then getting run over, and thinking that was funny, and then all of a sudden people regretted it. But it also shows, but the guy itself, he was quite into trying to get someone's mind engaged, and to try and be quite trying to look through some of the things that we do nowadays in everyday life, and how we are affected by groups, then how we are affected in our inner selves, and not just that, but also I think he was very good at trying to look out for what society is normally like when it comes to different things that go on in this world, and how people react to things. Like, for example, you could probably say he's done something to do with how ISIS formed, or how the London riots started. It's all that, and Darren Brown probably knows exactly how all this happens. Then also I looked at this article from The Guardian, I think it was about 3 years ago, about they're saying that 1 in 5 women in England and Wales get sexually assaulted, which is common. So 1 in 5 women, which is a lot. So if you were to have 5 women in a room, 1 would have been raped. So it's quite common for women to have that experience, and also it shows just how women shouldn't hesitate to tell if something like that is happening to them. So and so how is all this applied in class? So the mob mentality, it definitely links with the use of the introduction scene, where Jake's on one side, Lola's on the other side. Everyone fights together. And also during scene 15, where Marcus comes in to say, you deserve what you're going through, Jake. You don't, poor Lola, she was in absolute tatters. And, Harry goes on and starts wanting to attack Marcus. So all of those ones really do link well with mob mentality. Darren Brown really does. I think he links really well with how a group can easily encourage us to do the wrong, and to not keep by our inner selves, and how a group can more likely take control of us than us taking control of ourselves, which is why it's so important that you just stay with your inner self than thinking about how others affect you. And it's a bit like how Jake and Lola are the group of friends, and when they're all together, that something more hard hitting is going to happen when you're in a group than when you're as an individual. And learning about the article in 1 in 5 women getting sexually assaulted, also I felt I've had a lot more knowledge to take in on that subject, and to understand just how a subject like this is quite a serious one, and one that we want to it's now made me realise just how much people have to stress these issues to so many people, because so many women get assaulted, and it needs to be seen quite a lot from everyone who's in the cast, everyone who's going to see the show, all of that it actually is quite an important subject to really think consciously about. And what practical problems have I come across this week? Have we come across this week? Students have been absent this week, which has affected how we've been able to polish the scenes, get enough time to look over any of the scenes that people are still unsure of. And, when there's not much time left, it does affect the cast, and it does affect how much we can prepare for the show, which can lead to more extra rehearsals coming in. Not everyone will be available, so all the agreeable time slots won't happen because people aren't turning up. And it definitely can. It can affect how the final performance works, because attendance is so important when it comes to working on something like that. And if you don't attend, you can't collaborate, you can't work with everyone, you're behind schedule, which can be really annoying, and it can really stress the cast, it can stress the director, it can stress all. And and then also that can include, if people don't turn up enough, then it means that others have to get recasted for that role that someone hasn't turned up to cast for, which they've agreed to, and they've not come in, so they then get recast because they're not turning up to rehearsals. Which then means that if they had an understudy, that means the understudy would have to go in instead. And so and then Lola also sorry, my bad. Okay, let me say again. Also the other practical problems. Lola's sensory scene, which involved after Jake and Lola had their discussion, and Lola had an absolute breakdown, and so did Jake. We then had, when we had the screen footage of all the interviews being mashed together, and then of course some of the people, some of our cast members live who walked through Lola. A lot of it, no one was sure about the timing. Everyone was missed their cues, and they skipped lines, which affected the flow of the scene. Especially as the director doesn't want it to look a mess, and he wants it to be done in the way that he wants to see it instead of how we want to see it. So, unfortunately, we can't. This isn't the point where we can be stubborn, because we have to be respectful to what the director wants. So we had to stick by what he wants particularly. So have we created anything new? With the new scene, of course, we've got the new scene, which is something new that we've created, and which is during, the new scene, it's during scene 9 and scene, it's in scene 9 pretty much, so we've added a bit more to scene 9. And then, we've also blocked from scene 10 to scene 13 as well, so all of that's clearly cleared out as well. We also watched the footage back of the party scene, and I have to say I looked at myself quite a bit when I was looking at how I was acting on the screen, and it was quite odd because I've never seen myself do that before. But I noticed quite a few times that my eyes were poking towards the camera when the camera was looking at me. And there were points where, I did look quite odd because I was drunk. But, if you're drunk, you have to look odd. You have to look really weird and quite hyped, and your posture's a bit weird. So it's actually not too bad when you come to think of it. So, in a way, I think, for me, I definitely think that my eye line needs to be better, and I need to not try and poke it straight at the camera, because I know that I do that quite a lot, and I need to try not to do that at all. So and yeah, hopefully we didn't see it like as a full lot because we're still trying to fit Gary's still trying to fit all of the different camera recordings together so everything blends in well. And yeah, so hopefully by the time that's finished, we'll be able to see it back and we'll be able to really analyse how it all went, etc. So yeah, so how was the transition changing from stage to film? Yeah, I have to say, when I watch myself back from any stage productions, I always look at how good my angles are with the angle of where I need to be diagonally on stage, of course, so that everyone can see me, the audience can see me, so I'm not turning their backs to them. And yeah, I also analysed quite a few other things, so including the way my posture, also in looking at how well I can project, and of course looking at how well I can perceive my character in the right way, which I've always analysed when it comes to stage performances. But with screen, it seems a bit different because you don't see much of yourself, and sometimes it can look quite weird when you're analysing yourself on screen and you're trying to act instead of looking yourself, if you get what I mean. And in a sense, it's quite new for me to know that I'm now, looking a lot different from what I used to be, and it just looks a lot more weird and strange when you see yourself drinking whilst on screen, even though I wasn't actually drinking, but yeah, watching the footage back, it was really good, but I need to see it a few more times to really, think about my performance and analyse it, because as I've said before, it's still to be all fitted together, because most of the film footage has been taken separately, so they have to blend it in all together. So hopefully soon enough I'll be able to really analyse my performance and hopefully give a better detailed example of how well I did. So yeah, and yeah, that's it from me. This is Alex on the Hall for Viva Voce Week 4. Thank you for listening and goodbye.